The bar wasn't anything special, just wood-paneled walls, neon signs, and a jukebox that hadn't been updated in a decade. But it was home to the town's regulars, the kind of place where people knew your drink before you sat down, and your opinion before you opened your mouth. Jason had been there for less than 10 minutes. He wasn't loud, wasn't drawing attention. He sat at the end of the bar, nursing a glass of water, not even a drink. To anyone watching, he was just another aging loner in a plain coat, buzzcut, scar on the hand, weathered but quiet. The kind of man nobody worried about until they should have. He hadn't come to start anything, he'd come for peace. But peace never lasted long in places ruled by people with something to prove. It started with a waitress, young, early 20s, polite but clearly nervous. She was working alone, handling the tables, refilling drinks, brushing off comments she shouldn't have to. One guy at the center table, a loud one in a camo hat and untucked shirt, started getting handsy. First a joke, then a grab. She tried to smile through it. You could see it in her face, the way her eyes stayed on the floor while she laughed. Jason saw it too. He looked up. Just once. The guy caught the look and leaned back like he owned the place. "You got a problem, Grandpa?" Jason didn't answer. He just stood up, walked over. No tension. No threat, just quiet presence. He told the man, calm low, that the waitress wasn't a toy and maybe he should finish his drink and head out. The guy laughed. "You threatening me, old man?" Jason didn't flinch. He said no. Then he leaned slightly closer and said something only the man could hear. Whatever it was, it drained the blood from the guy's face. He stood up fast, muttered something about getting some air, and left through the back. The room went still. Jason looked at the waitress. "You all right?" She nodded, and that should have been the end, but the owner had been watching from behind the counter, heavyset, scowling, polishing a glass like it owed him money. His name was Rick, and he didn't like anything that made him feel small, especially not some stranger stepping into his space in his bar. He walked out from behind the bar, voice raised. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Jason turned slowly. "Just making sure she was okay." Rick didn't wait. "You don't come in here and start telling my customers how to act. You think just cause you've got a shaved head and a stare people are supposed to listen to you?" Jason didn't reply. Rick got closer. "You think you're something special?" Jason shook his head. "No. I think she deserves better than that guy. That's all." Rick looked around the bar, trying to draw support from his regulars. Most of them kept their heads down. He pointed to the door. "Get out." Jason didn't move at first. He glanced once at the waitress, her eyes wide, silently pleading. Then he looked back at Rick. "You sure about that?" Rick barked. "You think you're tough? You think I care if you're some ex-military burnout looking for free respect? This ain't your kind of bar. Get out." Jason nodded once, didn't raise his voice, didn't say another word. He turned. Walked past the bar, past the door, and into the cold night. Nobody stopped him, not a single person. The door slammed behind him. Rick shook his head and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Another washed-up vet playing hero." The waitress stood frozen. Rick poured himself a drink. "Guy should be glad I didn't call the cops." Outside, Jason walked slowly down the block, not hurried, not rattled, just quiet. He passed the bus stop, then the shuttered hardware store, then he stopped in front of the old war memorial. A bronze plaque, a folded flag under glass. He stood there for a while, then reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a phone, unlocked it with a thumbprint. No apps, no alerts, just a single contact list. He tapped one name, no ringtone, just a connection click. A voice answered, gruff, familiar. Jason spoke one sentence. "I need the table filled. Noon, tomorrow." The voice replied, "Copy that." Jason hung up, no anger in his voice, no fire, just gravity. Back in town, phones started ringing, not all at once. Not to everyone, only to 9 men, one in Virginia, one in Arizona, one in New York. Some hadn't heard Jason's voice in years, but every one of them answered the same way. "Where?" And then they packed their bags. The next morning arrived without warning. Rick unlocked the bar around 10, same as always. The bar stools were still crooked. The fryer hadn't been cleaned right. He cursed under his breath and kicked a crate into the storeroom. To him, yesterday was already forgotten. Some loner got mouthy, got kicked out, end of story. But the waitress didn't forget. She came in quiet, eyes scanning the street before stepping inside. Her name was Emily, and she'd worked here for 9 months. Tips weren't good, but they were better than nothing. And as long as she smiled through the garbage, Rick mostly left her alone. Until yesterday, she hadn't slept. Kept replaying the moment Jason stepped in, the way he stood, The way the drunk guy backed off without a second try. And the thing that stayed with her most, Jason's calm, not arrogance, not performance, just command. Now he was gone, and she figured she'd never see him again. She was wrong by 11:40 a.m. The parking lot began to shift. First came a black SUV, not a rental, not local, tinted windows, quiet engine. Then another different make, different state plates. Then two pickups, one old, one fresh, both clean. Both parked slow. Within 10 minutes, 4 vehicles had lined the edge of the bar. No one got out at first. Rick watched from the window, annoyed. Great, he muttered. Some damn motorcycle club convention. But Emily knew better. She stepped to the door and peeked through, and that's when she saw him, Jason, climbing out of the last SUV, wearing the same coat, same jeans. But something was different. It wasn't what he wore, it was who walked beside him. They moved as a unit, 8 men in total, all spread without speaking. One held the door, the others entered one by one, no patches, no declarations, no raised voices. They were calm, precise, quiet. And every single one of them moved like they'd cleared rooms for a living. Jason entered last. He scanned the room once, then walked to the corner table. They didn't sit near the bar. They took the entire back section. Chairs scraped, men settled in. No orders placed, just presence. The regulars went silent. Even the jukebox felt quieter. Rick blinked. "The hell is this?" Emily whispered before she could stop herself. They're not regular guys." Rick scoffed. "They're tourists. Watch me clear this out real fast." He stepped from behind the bar and walked straight to their table. The moment he arrived, one of the men, shaved head, full sleeve of ink, calm hands, looked up, didn't say anything, just looked. Rick hesitated mid-step, but Jason stood up slowly and faced him. No tension, no posture. Just calm. Rick's voice faltered a little. "You're back." Jason nodded once. Rick tried to smirk. "You bring your friends to settle a score." Jason said nothing. Another SEAL leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. The look said enough. Jason finally spoke. "Just here for lunch." Rick scoffed again, trying to recover. "Fine, as long as you don't cause trouble this time." Jason tilted his head, then asked one question. "What's trouble?" Rick blinked. Jason continued. "Because when I watched your customer grab that girl's arm and laugh in her face, was that not trouble?" Rick swallowed. Jason didn't raise his voice. "Or when you kicked me out instead of the drunk guy. Trouble?" Rick stepped back. Jason sat down. The other men didn't speak. They didn't have to. Emily brought over a tray of water, hands trembling slightly. One of the men, older, beard, cross scar on the neck, thanked her quietly. Then he reached into his coat and handed her a folded 10. She shook her head. "I didn't," he cut her off. "You stood when no one else did. That's worth more than a drink." She smiled, barely, then hurried back to the bar. One customer stood to leave, then another. By noon 30, the only people in the bar were Jason's team, Rick and Emily. Rick paced, couldn't sit still. Finally he burst out, "You trying to intimidate me?" Jason stood up again, walked toward the bar slowly. "No," he looked Rick in the eye. "You already did that to yourself." He placed a single coin on the bar, not a quarter, not a tip, a challenge coin, military issued. Deep blue and silver, engraved on one side, SEAL Team 4, command. Rick picked it up, turned it over on the back, a phrase. The quietest man in the room is usually the one who's already won. Rick looked up. Jason was already walking away. Before leaving, one of the SEALs approached Emily. He handed her a slip of paper. "I don't know what your plans are," he said, "but you deserve better than this place. If you ever need work anywhere, call this number." She looked down. "Veterans Outreach Cafe, Operations Office." She nodded, eyes wide. "Thank you." By the time the SEALs stepped outside, the bar felt like a tomb. Rick watched them leave. No threats, no yelling, no fights. But for the first time in his life he felt small. Jason was the last one through the door. He paused once, looking back. "Next time someone asks for help, maybe listen." Then he left. Rick didn't touch the coin for the rest of the day, didn't touch the bar, didn't speak. The weight of it all was finally starting to land. Emily didn't sleep that night. She kept replaying every second in her mind, the moment Jason stepped through the door, the way the bar fell silent, the way Rick froze when he realized he had no power left. But more than that, she remembered the moment after, when one of Jason's team handed her that card. The name, Veterans Outreach Cafe Operations Office, the number below it handwritten in block letters. She hadn't called yet, but she stared at it all night. not because she was unsure but because part of her couldn't believe any of it had really happened. Rick didn't say a word the next morning, no shouting, no threats. He didn't look her in the eye either. The coin Jason left sat untouched on the counter. The regulars returned quieter than usual. No one mentioned the seals, but everyone was thinking it. It had taken 10 men and 0 violence to completely shatter the bar's unspoken hierarchy. Jason hadn't raised a fist, and yet his presence left a crater. By noon, Emily folded her apron, clocked out, and walked 2 blocks to the post office. Inside a side booth, she sat down and pulled out the number. She hesitated just once, then dialed 2 rings. A voice picked up, calm, direct, operations. She introduced herself, unsure of what to even say. The man didn't sound surprised. "You're the bartender," he said. Emily blinked. "How did you—" "We were briefed, like this was a mission." The man continued. "You have 5 minutes to get to the cafe entrance off North Side. The back, not the front. We'll be waiting." Then he hung up. Emily stared at the phone, then stood up and ran. The back door was open when she arrived. She stepped inside slowly, expecting a cafe. Instead, she found a clean, quiet hallway with corkboards full of photos, SEAL teams, firehouse squads, folded flags, challenge coins mounted in rows. At the end stood a woman in her 40s, athletic, confident posture, wearing a simple long-sleeve shirt. "You Emily?" "Yes, come with me." They walked through a door and into what looked like a classroom. Inside were a dozen people, all mid-20s to mid-40s, men and women. Not military, not yet. Civilians, ordinary except not. They turned to her with faint nods. The woman beside her explained, "This is Tier 1 ground." Emily didn't understand, she explained. It was a program Jason helped fund and co-create, not for recruitment, not for show, for impact. People who had potential. Not to fight wars, but to lead quietly, operate with purpose, learn how to move like shadows and live like pillars. Some were trauma nurses, some were retired law enforcement, some were just like Emily, people who'd been stepped on, disrespected, underestimated. And now they were getting trained by the very men who used to operate behind enemy lines. Emily asked, "Why me?" The woman smiled. "Because you didn't flinch. You just needed a door." That afternoon, Emily trained, nothing extreme, just movement, awareness drills. But every time she shifted her balance, every time she ran through a control scenario, she heard Jason's voice in her head. "What's trouble?" Elsewhere in town, Rick stood behind the bar with sweat on his brow. A man in a denim jacket sat alone at the counter. After a long silence, the man spoke. "You know who that was yesterday?" Rick didn't answer. The man chuckled darkly. "Jason Statham. Real name, not the actor's. SEAL commander, Operation Crosswind. The real deal." Rick's hands clenched under the counter. The man kept talking. "You didn't just kick out a vet," he turned. "You kicked out the guy who trained the vets." Rick didn't sleep that night. Days passed. The story spread through town, though Jason's name never appeared online. The bar emptied. Locals went elsewhere. Rick tried to explain it away. "Fake tough guys," he muttered. But the damage was done, because now everyone knew, and respect, once lost like that, didn't return. Emily, meanwhile, trained harder. Week 2. Hand-to-hand drills. Week 3. Tactical awareness. Controlled environment simulations. Not military training, situational leadership. And one day, as she completed a timed de-escalation sequence perfectly, someone clapped behind her. She turned. Jason was standing in the back, same coat, same silence. He gave one nod, then left without a word. She didn't follow. She just smiled, because that single gesture meant more than any speech Rick had ever given. Rick hadn't opened the bar that morning. For the first time in years, he left the doors locked past noon, not because of fear, because of something worse, uncertainty. The town had changed. Or maybe it hadn't. Maybe it was just his place in it that shifted. The regulars who once echoed his jokes now nodded awkwardly, stayed for a single beer, and left early. Others stopped showing up at all. The bar felt heavier each day, not because of anything loud or dramatic, but because of the quiet that had settled in since the SEALs left. And then the letter came. The city official arrived around 3 p.m. She was young, polite, dressed in navy slacks and a windbreaker with the local emblem on the breast. She didn't sit, didn't order. Just walked to the bar and placed a sealed envelope directly on the counter. Rick stared at it. "What's this?" The woman's tone was firm, not rude. "Notification. A formal property interest transfer request was filed 2 days ago." Rick blinked. Property what? She clarified. A proposal to acquire this building and adjoining lot was submitted through a private foundation, registered under a military nonprofit. Rick opened the letter. It was official, stamped, signed, legitimate. The name at the top corner of the acquiring foundation read, Stillwater Brotherhood Fund founded by J. Statham. Rick's jaw tightened. This is some kind of joke. The official shook her head. It's not a forced acquisition. It's a buyout. Of my bar. It could be your check or it could be your competition. But if this goes through, she paused. They're planning a complete remodel. Veterans Outreach Cafe, peer training site, public kitchen. Rick scoffed. A soup kitchen run by soldiers. The official didn't flinch. She nodded toward the old corner booth. From what I've heard, those soldiers are the only reason this place didn't get shut down last year. She turned. One more thing. She pulled a folded note from her side pocket and placed it on the counter. Rick didn't want to touch it, but he did. Inside, in plain handwriting, it's never too late to decide who you are. No signature, but he knew the handwriting. That night, Rick sat in the dark. No music, no lights, no customers. He stared at the coin Jason had left on the bar days earlier, flipped it between his fingers, again and again, until it slipped and landed flat. He looked down at the phrase. The quietest man in the room is usually the one who's already won. And for the first time in his life, Rick realized he had no idea what real power looked like, because he'd never stopped to listen for it. Across town, Emily had just finished her last drill of the day. She was winded, bruised, smiling. The instructor nodded in approval. Better footwork. She bowed, caught her breath, and stepped outside to cool off. She was halfway through her water bottle when the woman from orientation approached. You've got a visitor. Emily turned. Jason stood by the edge of the parking lot, same coat, same eyes. He didn't speak until she reached him. You stayed. She nodded. You didn't have to. She shrugged. You didn't either. He smiled, barely, then handed her a sealed envelope. She hesitated. Inside, a formal letter of recommendation for employment signed by Jason, backed by his foundation. You're ready, he said. For what? For the next room. The next morning, a sign appeared on the front window of Rick's bar. Closed for renovation, future site of Stillwater Cafe, no fanfare, no statement, just a sign and an empty building. Locals whispered, some cheered, some frowned, but no one protested. Because even the ones who didn't like Jason's team respected them now, not for the muscle, not for the war stories, but because they walked in without needing permission and earned back the space with nothing but presence, unity, and respect. A month later, the cafe opened. The walls were repainted. The lighting changed, the bar removed in its place long community tables, shelves with books and resource guides, a section labeled Quiet Booths, no phones, no noise. On the wall hung a framed display, inside it, the challenge coin. A photo of Jason's SEAL unit, and the same handwritten note Rick once received. It's never too late to decide who you are. Rick, no one knew where he went. Some said he sold the deed. Others said he just walked away. But Jason never said a word about it, not once. He just came in once a month, sat in the corner booth and drank coffee in silence. The Stillwater Cafe had become a different kind of landmark. It didn't advertise, didn't post online, didn't play music, but word spread. Veterans knew it as a neutral ground. A place where no one asked for medals and no one gave speeches. A place where silence was respected and stories, when told, were told without shame. Jason visited once a month. He never stayed long, never said much. Sometimes he met a teammate. Other times he sat alone. But everyone felt it when he walked in, that unshakable stillness, like the air changed around him. And one rainy night in October, something changed again. The door opened around 8:15 p.m. Most of the tables were empty. Emily was working the counter, not as a waitress anymore, but as program coordinator. She'd moved up fast, took to the role with quiet discipline and a fierce sense of order. The man who stepped in looked young, maybe 25, wet hood, shaking hands, civilian clothes with military posture. Worn backpack clutched like a lifeline. He didn't speak at first. Emily approached gently. Coffee. The man looked past her, eyes scanning the room, then he whispered, "Is Jason here?" She froze, then nodded toward the back. Jason was seated, as always, in the corner booth, coat hung over the chair, a journal open in front of him. The man walked slowly across the room. Every step felt like it cost him something. Jason didn't look up until the man reached the booth and stood in silence. Jason closed his journal. Said nothing. The man finally sat down, then whispered, voice cracking, "I didn't know where else to go." They talked for nearly an hour, quiet, controlled, uninterrupted. No one else approached, no one asked questions. Because at Stillwater, when someone sits across from Jason like that, you don't interrupt. When the man finally stood, his hands were no longer shaking. He gave Jason a firm nod and left without another word. Emily walked over slowly. Jason looked up. "He was with Second Recon," he said. She waited. "Lost someone 2 weeks ago. Feels like it was his fault." Emily nodded. "He going to be okay?" Jason thought for a moment, then answered simply, "He's not going to be alone." That night, Emily wrote down a line on a napkin and pinned it to the staff board. The mission doesn't end when the fighting stops. Sometimes it starts there. Jason saw it the next day, didn't say a word, but he moved his journal off the counter and replaced it with a small brass plaque, 4 words, "You're not alone here." In the months that followed, the cafe expanded. A second location opened in Austin, then another in Pittsburgh, all under the same code: no noise, no sales, no cameras, just stillness, coffee, connection. And men like Jason, veterans, trainers, protectors, watching from the corners, ready when needed, not to fight but to anchor. Rick was never seen again in town. But once, late at night, a letter arrived, unmarked envelope, typed unsigned note inside. It read, "You were right. It's never too late to decide who you are. Thanks for showing me." No one had to ask who it came from. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the day Jason was kicked out of that bar, something unexpected happened. At noon sharp, every table at Stillwater Cafe filled. Not with SEALs, not with veterans, but with people who had been helped, people who had walked in broken and walked out seen. Jason stood near the entrance watching. Emily approached him with a small package, wrapped in canvas. She handed it to him. He unwrapped it slowly. Inside, a framed photo of the entire original SEAL team that had walked into Rick's bar that day, taken just minutes before they entered. The caption read, "The day everything changed, without a single shot fired." Jason stared at it for a long time, then hung it himself, right above the quiet corner booth. No ceremony, no announcement, just one man, one mission, still walking. Not every fight is loud. Some are fought in silence, with presence, respect, and the power of showing up. Have you ever witnessed someone completely change a room without saying a word? Tell us your story in the comments below. We want to hear it.